Many agents dream about selling luxury properties, but what are the pros and cons to working in the luxury space? Well, today we're talking to an agent who is at the very top of that mountain. He's going to tell you exactly what it's like. Stay tuned. This episode of Keeping It Real is brought to you by Real Geeks. How many homes are you going to sell this year? Do you have the right tools? Is your website turning soft leads into interested buyers? Are you spending money on leads that aren't converting? Well, Real Geeks is your solution. Find out why agents across the country choose Real Geeks as their technology partner. Real Geeks was created by an agent for agents. They pride themselves on delivering a sales and marketing solution so that you can easily generate more business. Their agent websites are fast and built for lead conversion with a smooth search experience for your visitors. Real Geeks also includes an easy-to-use agent CRM. So once a lead signs up on your website, you can track their interest and have great follow-up conversations. Real Geeks is loaded with a ton of marketing tools to nurture your leads and increase brand awareness. Visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod and find out why realtors come to Real Geeks to generate more business. Again, visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod. And now, on to our show. Hey, podcast listeners, are you trying to figure out how you can actively prospect on Instagram, but you feel like you need more followers or more engagement? Well, Michelle Berman-Michael, who I've interviewed on this show, has created a program that will teach you 3 secret Instagram strategies. First, how to create killer content so you can get more views without needing a videographer. Second, how to effortlessly prospect using Instagram by spending minutes, not hours. And third, how to get more engagement than ever before without needing to post every day. Now, Michelle is so confident you'll love her program that just for Keeping It Real listeners, you can get her course, which is called Beyond the Method, for 10% off. Now, here's how to do that. Visit igcourse.com, again, igcourse.com, and schedule a free consultation with Michelle. Let her know that you're a Keeping It Real listener. Again, that's igcourse.com. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I am your guide and host through the month. And in just a moment, we're going to be speaking with top producer HLorey. Before we get to Howard, just wanted to let everyone know. So we're now coming, probably this will be the end of July when we're releasing this. And in June, we had our very biggest month ever on the podcast, nearly 200,000 downloads. So thank you so much to everybody for continuing to listen and also telling a friend. And I'll just also make a quick reminder to please tell another friend if you would do us a huge favor. Think of another agent that might benefit from listening to the show and shoot them a link. We'd really appreciate it. You guys know how to find us, and we appreciate you so much. I can't believe after 7 years, the podcast is doing better than ever. Really exciting. And I'm got some thoughts for maybe some additional shows to bring to you in the upcoming next 6 months or so. So stay tuned for that. Also, please support our sponsors. They are the reason we can keep doing these shows along with you. Your participation, please participate in what they offer. We love their products and services, and we love our sponsors. Okay, let's get to the main event, my conversation with HLorey. Hey, today our guest is HLorey of Norman & Associates in California. Let me tell you more about Howard. Now, Howard's a longtime resident of Los Feliz and Silver Lake. HLorey built his real estate career representing clients in the entertainment and creative arts industries. Coming from a career as a successful professional musician, his experience brings him unique insight and understanding into the needs of his clientele. Now, Howard is currently the executive vice president and the brokerage manager for Norman & Associates. Howard, this is incredible. Howard and his team have closed over 380 transactions in the past year with a total sales volume of just under 700 million. Incredible. With more than 24 years of real estate experience, Howard is a respected coach and mentor to his team of 175 plus agents. As a leader and expert in the real estate industry, he has continued to amplify the company's core values of integrity and loyalty, further strengthening the company's brand and presence throughout the Los Angeles area. To learn more about Norman and Associates, and by the way, if you are a realtor in the LA area and you are thinking maybe you want to explore other options, or maybe you're not getting enough agent development from your current firm, support, service, tools, whatever the deficit may be, reach out to Howard to see if he and his team might be a good fit for you. They're incredible and we're excited to bring him on. But go to normand.com. That's NOURMAND.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Howard, welcome to the show.
Hi, DJ. Thank you so much. That was quite an introduction. So,
Well, you
thank you
you're
very
you're
much.
you're you're quite a broker owner or broker manager, as well as a agent yourself. So I'm excited to dive into your story, and also sort of how you're keeping the troops rallied these days, as lots of changes are headed our way, or maybe you're already here. Things are changing, of course. So excited to get your thoughts and perspective, as you and your agents tend to service, the luxury market. Um,
Sure.
let's let's talk about you. So how'd you get into real estate? I I love the professional musician thing. So how did you
Yeah.
move from musician over to agent?
It was an interesting journey for me. I started, I moved to Los Angeles in 1991. I worked as a professional musician for about 13 years. Um, Most of what I did was recording and performing and touring. So I worked mostly at night. I worked through Los Angeles, and a lot of times I was gone. I wasn't here.
Yeah,
Um, and I did this for about 13 years. And about, around the late 90s, 99, 2000, I felt inspired to figure out a different way to earn a living rather than touring and performing. My father-in-law actually owned his and operated his own boutique residential brokerage in Laguna Beach. It was called the Chateau Company, and I think he had 20, 25 agents,
yeah.
and it was just very appealing to me. I liked the energy. It felt familiar to me. I found a lot of similarities between brokerage and being an agent and the music business, ironically.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So you wanted to get off of the road. You were what, a
Yes.
studio guy? You were also a tour guy. You were
Yeah.
you were you somebody that bands would hire on to go on tours, or did you have your own band? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, no, no. Initially, I had my own band. I had a band throughout the 90s, and we were recording artists, so we were doing a lot of records and recording a lot, and then obviously playing live shows to support the records.
Sure,
Um, and that spun into a different band called Van Gogh's Ear. I was in that band for a few years,
I
and
like the
then
name.
thank you. That was a big Southern California band. We had a lot of success here in Southern California. And then I worked as a solo singer songwriter for a few years, where I did
Wow.
do more studio work, more writing with different artists in New York and Nashville and LA. And it was a beautiful, amazing journey. But I got to a point where there were some other things that I wanted to do.
Mm,
Um, and when you're working as a musician in that capacity, if there's any musicians listening, I'm sure you can relate. It's all consuming. It's an amazing journey, but it can be a difficult it can be difficult on your body and
sure.
your brain as an adult, as you move into your 30s and 40s.
Yeah, because for me, I've found that routine for me, not everyone's built the same way, but for me, routine is really important. And
Yeah,
obviously, being a creative is makes it difficult, especially if you're traveling. You're doing
right.
things at different hours, and a lot of times, creative space, people do things at different times, and it's more chaotic, as just the nature of that sort of creative energy is. And so, yeah, I can appreciate wanting to
Yeah,
put some roots down and
yeah.
get off of the grind. Although, do you still play? Are you still performing from time to time, or have you put
Yes.
it all down?
No, no, I still work with various musicians around LA. I do occasional live shows still.
Wow.
Um, but it's really interesting, in music, so much of what you do is you're you're planting the seeds for future.
Mm,
And so that part of it, with the way it aligns with real estate, is very similar. But the difference is, in real estate, you get the return so much faster. Where
yeah,
in music, you're planting seeds for years ahead, and then a lot of times you don't get the return.
right.
So, you know, that part of it is what I think wears on musicians for after, unless they have achieved, that elite success where
Sure.
they're world famous and wealthy.
Yeah, there's so many things that can go wrong with a musician's. They go and they put out an album, and maybe the studio or
Yeah,
the distributor doesn't promote it. The
right.
label doesn't promote it. It could be totally outside of the musician's control. Even though this product that they put out is fantastic, nobody knows about it, right? So there's a lot of things, and in real estate,
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that can go wrong too that you don't have control over, but fewer things with a more projected return, I guess. So
totally agree. Yeah, you definitely have more. You're more of a pilot, I think, on the in the real estate industry. In music, you're a pilot of your artistic vision,
sure.
but you're not a pilot when it comes to the career part of it. When it comes to the actual compensation part of it, that you're at the mercy of a lot of different things you have no control over. So that part of it gets very difficult.
And it seems today in the music industry that touring seems to be about the only way to make money, at least in like the rock and roll space. And I just saw, speaking of Southern California, I just saw one of my favorite SoCal bands, Social Distortion, just was here,
Oh yeah.
which great band from Fullerton and Orange County, and they, I'm looking at Mike Ness, the lead singer, and he's got to be in his late 50s, maybe
Oh
early
yeah.
60s, and
Oh yeah.
and he's still doing it, and he's doing a great job. But I go, boy, that's got to be hard on their bodies. That's just got to be rough. But that's how
Yeah.
they make money. So,
That's how
so
they make money, and
yeah,
the days of, artists getting paid for record sales and
yeah,
royalties are pretty much gone, unless you're Taylor Swift or, a mega star.
sure.
The artist doesn't get paid for that anymore, which is crazy to me, but that's just the way it is. You make money through
Well, I know
performing and
that
touring.
just to switch gears, because I know that I could talk about music all day with you, because that's one of
Yeah,
my big passions. It is not necessarily our audience's passion, so I'm going
sure.
to audit myself and move along to something that I know that you're super passionate about, in addition to music, which is agent development. And I know that is your thing, which I love, because there are so many. A lot of times, agent development, for anyone listening, is as just, if you're not as familiar with brokerages, a lot of times, brokerages, especially boutique brokerages, you do not have a boutique brokerage. Of course, you have a large brokerage, but still, I mean, you have a boutique maybe focus, but still, even in smaller firms and even larger firms, a lot of times the training, the agent development, the coaching really falls on the managing broker's lap. They're also wearing a lot of other hats: compliance, paperwork, staffing, human resources, everything. And so it can be difficult. And so I know, over the years, teams have risen, or the popularity of teams has risen, and a lot of teams now are taking over some of that agent development role. But I always love when it's really coming from the person, in charge of the brokerage, and that's you. So walk us through a little bit about agent development, what that means to you, and how you begin to sort of develop your own agents.
The agent development part of it is so fascinating to me because it's a very personal thing. I know there's a lot of coaches in our industry right now. You've got Mike Ferry, and there's all kinds of,
Buffini, and yeah, a million
Buffini.
others. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of good stuff out there. My process is very, I don't want to use the word holistic because that sounds kind of corny, but it's very authentic. It's very straightforward. It's basically getting in the water with the agent and helping them untangle where they are, because a lot of agents, when they get started and they maybe say they work in the industry 4 or 5 years, they generally reach a plateau. They get stuck where they are. They don't know how to grow it, how to get to the next level. And that's really where I think my strength is being able to get into the situation with the agent and help them unwind their business and look at it at a really minute level, and then help them eliminate things that they're doing that are wasting time, energy, and money, and really focus on the things that are going to inspire the growth of their brand, or their revenue, their lead generation.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Where do you see agents struggling right now? Like what are some of the big sticking points that you find when you do a deep dive into an agent's business and you're like, okay, let's look for some inefficiencies. Where are you
Yeah.
seeing those?
You know, the biggest thing that I see with agents, and I see it a lot. I see it with new agents, but I see it more with seasoned agents that have already achieved some success. But it's just like anything else. You develop habits, you develop processes that work for you.
Hmm.
Um, but what happens over time is you start developing habits that are not conducive to building your brand and to
Mm,
helping you grow your client list. And agents get stuck in the reactive part of it, the reactive work, the stuff that comes at them every day that they have to do. They
sure.
have to manage their deals, they have to service their clients, they have to look at inventory, they have to write offers. All that stuff is necessary to being an agent, but none of that inspires your business to grow. And
And that's and
agents get
I want
lost
to
in that.
pause. And Howard, I want
Sure.
to pause for a moment because you just said something incredibly profound. It's probably something that our audience has heard before. And I always think repetition is the mother of skill. But Howard really just said something I want to just put a fine sort of stamp on because it's really, really, really important is that the things that fly at us oftentimes throughout the day are typically client service or servicing a client related kind of, dealing with existing deals, answering
Right.
phones, all of those things to get a deal closed. And it can feel very busy. It can feel very rewarding. And then at the end of the day, you might realize, oh, I didn't actually prospect today, or I
That's
didn't
right.
do some of my client touches because I was so busy with all this daily work.
Right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think that is the largest pitfall that I see 90% of the agents make. So what
Yeah.
I do is when I do the work with the agents is we sit down and I get them to start thinking differently about how they look at their work and separating it into two separate funnels or buckets or whatever you want to call it. One is reactive, one is proactive.
Hmm.
We all know what proactive means, but we also have to define what that proactive action is. That's the key. And then what the reactive actions are because you do them every day. You can do them in your sleep. You don't have to spend weeks and hours and months redefining that. You just have to know how to do it. But you have to be able to distinguish between the two and make
Yeah.
sure that you're spending enough time doing the things that are going to actually help you grow, not
I, I
just
want. I wonder if
spin,
it
you
wouldn't.
know?
Yeah, and I think this idea of distinguishing is really important, and you just sort of sparked an idea for me, and it sounds pretty simple, and I think it could be an easy thing to dismiss, but for anyone listening, I don't think this is a terrible idea. Anything that comes at you during a work day, and just do this for a couple of days to get a sense of how to start organizing. As it comes in, before you respond, I would suggest going, is this a client service thing? Is this I'm
Absolutely.
going out and doing more? I'm getting more business, or I'm prospecting. Just put it in a category in your mind so that you know what you're doing when. Because otherwise, you're just reacting to the thing, you're solving the thing, and it can feel awesome. And you get that dopamine hit when you solve it. All right, I did something, and that's great. You do need to do those things, but if you spend all day doing it, maybe not so great. So
That's
yeah,
right. That's right. No, and you think about it, you think about the amount of reactive work you do. Let's say if you have two listings, you just think about the reactive work that's involved with those two listings. And then let's say you have two buyers and two leases. Okay, so that's six clients.
yeah,
And then the amount of reactive work that you have with those six clients is like ridiculous. And what happens is agents live there, they get lost there,
yeah.
and they don't spend any of the time thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to put more fuel in my tank for my business? And it sounds really simple, but then even when they make the distinction, we have to define what the actions are going to be. What are the proactive actions going to be to stimulate the growth? So that's kind of it in a nutshell. You know, we do it through. I do a lot of quantitative analysis with their data, with their annual sales production. We look at that, a few times a year. That tells me a lot of things. We source their business, so we know actually where the business is coming from.
Hmm.
And then we have a series of qualitative discussion, which is more. about them, more personal, why they do things they do, maybe strengths they have, weaknesses, fears, things that can potentially, get in their way, prevent them from doing things they need to do to grow it.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about threading the needle or walking the tightrope between getting the urgent things done. Well, first, categorizing everything into urgency and importance. That's
Right,
like an old
right.
Stephen Covey idea of having a quadrant, four quadrants with urgency and importance, and sort of determining. So, how does somebody get out of the habit of just doing everything immediately as it comes in, and really evaluating the action or the task in advance so that it doesn't take up a whole day? What are some sort of techniques that you have, or how do you suggest somebody look at their business so that they don't get to 5 o'clock and they're like, oh, I just was
Yeah,
helping this one client
yeah.
all day. Yeah.
Well, it's counterintuitive, but I generally try to get the agent to turn their day upside down.
Ah,
Get up in the morning, look at your email first, first thing early. And listen, this doesn't work for everybody, but for some
sure.
people, to look for any potential emergencies and then go away from it. Do your personal things, exercise, eat, whatever you do. And then in the morning, you be proactive. You be proactive for, say, 2 hours in the morning. You have your list of things you're going to do, of your actions that we've defined for you. You do those, then you break, eat lunch, and then you move into your reactive work.
I
And
love it.
you're going to have a lot of it in front of you. So organize it, knock it out. That's it. That's most people that I've been able to convert to that type of schedule, we've seen substantial growth over, 2, 3 years.
I mean, could you imagine if even, and again, you have great agents, and I'm in no way suggesting that they are not doing what they should, because of course, I'm sure generally they are. But could you imagine if every one of, I'm just going to say it about our agents, if I can imagine if all of our agents spent an hour or two every morning just literally doing
Mm,
outreach, whether it's existing sphere of influence, whether it's meeting new people, putting them in the database, whatever that those outreach, those touches are. I mean, people would not fail in this business.
no,
They could be the world's worst agent and you would still do okay just because you prospected an hour or two a day. I always love that. It's a Brian. I heard it from Brian Tracy. I'm sure he didn't come up with it, but I'll credit
yeah,
him. He says prospecting solves all problems, and I don't know that he's wrong. I think that that's as close, and I don't. And of course, it doesn't really solve all problems, but it probably solves the biggest problem that agents have, which is they get busy and then they aren't prospecting and their pipeline dries up as you. And
that's right.
Howard, I have a question for you. Actually, this is a
Sure,
great a
sure.
great thing, and this is a thing. Again, it's something that agents probably know, but I always like to remind them. The work you're doing today really for outreach, for
Mhm.
not the existing deal you're trying to close, but looking further out, the outreach, the person you're meeting in the grocery store today, and you're like, I'm going to put them in my database.
Right,
That's really not bearing fruit for a while.
right.
So how long does that typically take? Do you say, so from the moment I meet somebody, and again, whenever they need help, we don't know, but typically you're looking what, like a year, maybe 2 years out. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I've always had a little bit of an issue with some of the time frames that I had
Yeah,
been taught, because every situation, with it depends on who you meet and what their motivation is. If they're having a baby, okay, probably 6 to 9 months. We
sure.
got to get them out and get them into something new. But I would say, as a rule, if you're incubating somebody, as I call it, if it's someone that you've met and they're like, yeah, my son's going to graduate high school and then we're going to sell and we're going to buy, yeah, it's usually about 12 months
Yeah,
seems to be kind of the happy average, that I see more commonly. Um, and then you have your active pipeline, which are people that are going to potentially transact with you in the next 90 days. And I separated into those two factions because I used to have more, but it was too difficult to categorize. So I
sure.
put them into incubating, which could be 12 months, and active is 90 days. And that
I
seemed to
love it.
be very effective, very clear. The agents seem to be able to track that. And you know what, I want to just go back to something you said a minute ago that kind of rang my bell. I know agents say this because I've heard so many agents say this about lead generation. Is how many times have you heard an agent say, "God, how does that how does that agent get business? They're such a terrible agent, you
Right.
know? I mean, how many times have we heard an agent say that?
All the time.
Um, okay, so the reason that agent gets business is not because they're working on being an agent. It's because they're lead
Right.
generating.
That's
That's
a
what they spend
brilliant observation.
all their
Brilliant
time
observation.
in. Yeah, all they do is spend their time lead generating. That's why they have business. They
Yeah,
may not even know how to write an offer, but they lead gen. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that,
sure.
but I think you need both. But I think in no matter which market you're in, if you're in LA, if you're in Iowa, if you're in Florida, if you're in Texas, Oklahoma, there are agents like that who are not great at the mechanics of being an agent, but they're great at getting business. And that is part of your job as an agent is to go get business. And you have to learn how to do it. Some people are really good at it naturally, and some people have to learn how to do it. So anyway, that's kind of my observation, you know.
I think it's a very astute observation. We think a lot about the increasing our skills working with clients, and we should, of course, that should always be happening because you want that dual sort of mastery of prospecting or business development and of course customer service and dealing with your actual
Right.
customers so that they tell everyone about you and come back and all of that. I have a question about the incubation. So you talked about
Mhm.
basically separating your list into, or at least knowing who's most likely to transact in the next 90 days, and then this other group's maybe 12 months out. What are you sort of suggesting? Let's start with the 90-day people. So I have somebody who I think in the next 3-4 months is likely to do something in real estate. What do you coach your agents on as far as touches for those 90 days? Like, what is sort of the strategies there?
Um, I think it's evolved. I think it's changed. You know, it used to be, I would say 10, 12 years ago, where you'd set those active clients up with a private agent website where they would get inventory every day and you would see what they would get and they could make notes and you could look and see what they liked and what they didn't like. I don't feel that as effective. I
Yeah.
think when you're working with somebody and you're servicing them. And I call servicing when you're working with someone before they're under contract. Um, your job is to go out and find them something. So I think it's a more effective exercise to be out previewing and then to call them or text them or email them and say, I previewed 2 properties or I previewed 4 properties this weekend. I saw 2 that I think you'd be interested in. When can you go?
Mm,
And they're going to say, oh, what is it? And then you tell them what it
right.
is, and they're like, can you send me the pictures? You're like, absolutely, but I really think you should see this regardless of what you think about the photos because it shows better than it looks on the MLS, but here they are. I think you will get much more traction with your buyers if you do that than if you're just blindly sending them things and waiting for them to tell you what they want to see.
I
um,
love that. I love that. This idea of, not just putting someone on a saved search and because again, people don't really need that anymore, right? They're
that's
going to
right.
Zillow or Redfin or any other home search site that
Yeah,
pulls from the MLS, and they're basically seeing almost everything that we're seeing. In some cases, they're seeing exactly what we're seeing, and they don't necessarily need us to find them a property. But this idea of this curated list of, oh my gosh, I just saw this thing. You got to see this
that's right.
is very compelling, and it really is for me in particular. Just as a consumer, that's what I love when I have a service provider that's like, "Oh, I just thought about you. I got this thing that I want you to see,"
Yeah.
versus me
Yes.
coming to them and saying, "Well, I mean, obviously." The agent's going to need to know exactly what that client's looking for, and they would have already done that by that point. But this idea of coming to somebody with an actual solution is, there's nothing more appealing to me in any provider, whether it's an accountant, my dentist. All I
That's
want is
right.
somebody to be like, okay, here's what's going on, here's what we need to do to fix it, or here's the solution, and I want somebody to come to me with that.
Yeah, I also think, being engaged with your brokerage community. I know that's a cliche too. Everybody talks about it, but if you're out previewing and you're talking to other brokers and agents that and you hear about something that they're getting or that they're bringing to the market, talk to your client about it. You know, tell them like, I have an agent I've done some deals with. He's getting a Spanish. I talked to him today. He's going to get a Spanish in 3 weeks. in Silver Lake. It's got a pool. You kind of get them. You chum in the water a little bit. You need to make sure there's actual inventory coming so that they don't feel like you're stringing them along. But I think that's where our value is as agents. It's not sending them inventory. They can get that on Zillow. They can get that on Redfin.
Mm.
You know, our value is helping them not make a bad investment and helping them find um, helping them understand what they're buying.
I would like just to start talking about the NAR settlement, but before we do
Mhm.
that, I would love to, because your agents tend to play in the high net worth space with luxury properties, and of course, agents. It's a reasonable fantasy to sort of think I would like to also be in that market. What do you think most non-luxury agents don't understand? What is it that they misunderstand about the luxury space?
Great question. Because everybody wants to do luxury.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people want to do luxury.
sure.
And I do think it takes a certain mindset to do it because it is different. So when you're not doing luxury, you're dealing with a lot of hurdles that are generally tangible with regards to the property, the lending landscape, appraisals, um, deficiencies, requests for repairs, credits, things like that. And that's I think that probably rings true to lots of agents. When you're dealing with luxury, you're dealing with a different set of hurdles. You're dealing with a business manager, an attorney, a personal assistant, a celebrity who's not making the decision, even even though you think they would be. A lot of times they don't. You're dealing with very complicated trusts. You're dealing with vesting issues. It's a different type of brain exercise, and a lot of it are things that you don't have control over. So it's a different kind of minefield. So I hate to use that word, but it is, and navigating through it can take more time and more patience, um, and really test your ability to communicate and kind of build that relationship with whomever you're having an obstacle with.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would have, as you said, a lot of times high net worth individuals have a team, and they bring that team
Yes.
with them to make big
Yes.
financial decisions. And so you're
Yes.
serving several masters. Could be, like you
Yes.
said, the manager, the accountant, the financial planner, the of course the client themselves, and whatever family are associated with that decision too. So there's not just this. I have to sort of meet the needs of this one person. I have to meet the needs of the team.
That's right. Very
So
well said. I think you said that very, very eloquently. That's very true. You have to serve many needs, not just the client's needs. Very well said.
so it's not all pros. There's pros and cons to everything, and I guess if you're able to really understand the needs of the high net worth client, then it's probably a fantastic fit. But you're right, you do have to have a deeper level of awareness of estate planning, or at least know enough to be able to have a conversation to then say, okay, I've got a great estate planning guy that I want to run through all this with, or whatever. But you're right, you just have to have a higher degree of skill to what those clients actually need, which is different from the non-luxury market. You're not
That's
dealing with
true.
as many trusts and
Right.
complicated financial setups. Um, would
And as
let's
you can
talk.
imagine, I'm sorry, one other thing. As you can imagine too, in the luxury market, it's very, very competitive. So there's
Of
a lot of
course,
a lot of fish swimming in the sea.
yeah.
But that's true in our industry, regardless of what price point you work in now. So
It is, and the grass is always greener, right? We always think, whether it's
yeah,
if I went to that brokerage, and they have, maybe I do better at that brokerage, and maybe that's true. But a lot of it is smoke and mirrors, and a lot of it
yeah,
is really trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I meet the needs of this client? What skills do I need to develop in order to be of service to people in that market? And that's really, if you want to get started in luxury, that's where you start. Talk to some high net worth people and say, hey, when you choose an agent, what do you look for? Like, what are some of the things? And you'll find out real quickly what skills you need. So the NAR settlement is changing some things, and obviously everyone is probably a little sick of hearing about conversations with it, but I think it's really important to keep talking about the skills that are going to be needed that maybe weren't as needed before, although they should have always been in place. But agents didn't always really talk to buyers much about compensation, or certain agents did, and certain agents didn't. And so things are changing. What do you see changing, or what's sort of affecting? Have you seen anything that's really disrupting your space with your agents?
Um, well, I think the thing that's been disruptive has just been the fear. There's a lot of fear because we're entering a new cycle in our industry. And when you enter a new cycle, when you enter a new era, so to speak, there is going to be fear. There's going to be a lot of noise, and there's going to be a lot of misinformation. And I feel like the initial issues are distorted a bit. Um, you know, um, Distinguishing the actual mandated changes from the initial complaint is key. And I'm speaking about our market. The actual changes in our market so far are that the cooperating brokerage commissions will no longer be published in our MLS. That
Right.
starts August 17th.
Yep.
Um, it's not, the issue is not that co-op fees are going away, at least not yet. We're not finding that so far. So now that could change. But as of now, that's not the issue that we're confronted with. And I think that confuses the agents and the public. How I think it will play out, my instinct is that I think probably buyer side commissions will compress a little bit, um, potentially get a little smaller. Um, and what we're doing is we're doing really basic stuff, obviously educating our agents on the new California buyer broker agreement, helping them understand how to structure it, exclusive, non exclusive, if it's for specific properties, if it's for a county, if it's for a specific city. And then obviously the compensation part of it, and helping them with dialogue to understand, to get it under their hands on how they're going to articulate it to the buyer. Because in our market, if there's a co-op fee, obviously the obligation goes away. It doesn't, it doesn't stack on in addition. It's not like you're going to get 2% from the seller and 5% from the buyer. Now you can do that it's negotiable. If your buyer is willing to pay you, then they're willing to pay you. But the way that our agreement is set up, our state agreement is set up, if there is compensation that's designated for the buyer's broker, then the fee that the buyer obligated to pay goes away. So I think that's a clear distinction that a lot of agents weren't making.
Yes.
I don't know
Yeah,
if you're experiencing the same thing.
we are. I haven't yet in our local market. I know they exist. I've heard rumblings of these 0% co-op listings, but that has not been a regular thing. We'll see. I suspect there will be sellers who go, before we actually offer a commission, let's try it without one. And maybe their agent will say, okay, I don't know what we'll see. I hope that doesn't become too commonplace, of course, because that would be difficult for buyer brokers.
Sure.
But this is an opportunity for buyer agents to really have those conversations. Well, they have to now. I mean, you just have to have those
Yeah.
conversations, and you need to say, here's what I'm compensated, or this is what I charge. Here's what I do, and here's how it's paid. And in most cases, it's going to be paid through this one way, but possibly there's another way. And this is, how. And I've talked to agents who have had that structure in place for years.
Right.
It's fun to talk to those agents because they're all sort of smiling and laughing these days because they
Yeah.
go, "Oh, this is really no big deal." It seems like a big deal because you have to have this potentially difficult conversation, and
Right.
it can be a difficult conversation, of course. And I've talked to agents who have been doing this for 8+ years who are like, I've never gotten resistance to it. Like, and I go, I've even asked agents, have there been times where the buyer has had to come to the table with your commission? And they go, oh yeah, it happens.
Hmm.
And they
Yeah.
go, yeah, as long as you're, as long as you really can, articulate your value proposition, you usually get the buy-in pretty easy and early, and it just doesn't even become a thing.
Yeah, I think a simple way of looking at it, something that we've done is, we're training agents who represent more buyers to operate more like a listing agent now, to
Yeah.
have a presentation, to be able to substantiate their value, to be able to articulate what they actually do, rather than just, I'm going to show you some houses and I'll represent you. That's not what we do. What we do is we help them. We help them substantiate the value of what they're buying. We help them through the escrow process. We help them with their investigations. We help them with their appraisal, with their lending. I mean, as you know, it's a long list of what we actually do when we service a buyer. So I think it's a good thing. I think the change in our industry was needed, at
Mhm.
least in California. I know we were kind of, I hate to say we were behind, but we kind of were. There's plenty of states that have been using it, mandated it for years, and we haven't. And I think that now that we are, I think in some ways it will help us.
Well, yeah, we're just starting to use it here as well in Illinois, and which is kind of funny because the NAR's national headquarters are a few
Right.
miles away from this office.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's funny too. I've started getting, and I probably everyone, I've started getting the emails about, hey, let's do a class action lawsuit. I've started to see those trickle in
Mm.
over the last week or two. So we're going to start seeing a lot of those as well, I suspect. So
Yes.
we'll
Yes.
be curious to see what happens with NAR, and hopefully they're still able to really provide service and protect agents as is their job. With respect, so I have a question about this sort of high net worth space or the luxury space, because
Okay.
you said something very interesting. It's like, oh yeah, of course, agents want to work in that space. It's a very desirable space.
Mhm.
It's also a very competitive space. And
Mhm.
so what I'm curious about, not as so much as how you meet high net worth clients, because that's a conversation. And I've had that conversation a lot with high net worth agents. So I feel like we've covered that a lot on the show. What I really haven't done a great job of is realizing that you have a client with high net worth I'm sorry, you have an agent with high net worth clients, and of course, because those clients are so desirable, like as you said, the competition is fierce. And just
Mhm.
because you sold somebody a home doesn't mean that other agents aren't still trying to contact that person after the sale to
Right.
build a relationship. What do you coach your agents to do to stay top of mind after the sale, in particular because these high net worth clients could become, obviously, are very valuable, and obviously you don't want to lose that relationship. And this doesn't just apply, of course, to high net worth. It really applies to all clients. But I'm curious because the competition is so fierce. You sell
Mhm.
somebody $100,000 property, they're
Mhm.
probably not going to be getting blanketed with lots
That's
of
right.
other agents who are like, I want to be, and maybe that's an opportunity for agents to do that. But certainly in the high net worth space, that's happening all the time. So curious of what you do to sort of say, let's make sure they don't forget about you.
So, good question. So high net worth people generally are, either high net worth business people, people that are part of trusts, or celebrities. You know, um, the celebrity part of it is more difficult unless you have, with regards to maintaining contact with that person, unless you have, and then I would say this is unusual to have a direct line to the high visibility person, and you just have a relationship with them. So I would say generally the common thread in those situations, from my perspective, is learning who the actual decision makers are. And sometimes it's more than one person. Sometimes it's two people. Occasionally it's three, but sometimes it's just one. Sometimes it's just the business manager. Um, and really is it's about cultivating a relationship with that person. And I know that that sounds very fundamental or elementary, um, but that's really what it is. And it's staying in touch with them socially,
Mhm.
um, inviting them to mixers, attending nonprofit events, inviting them. It's about being involved socially and making sure you're visible. and that you're continuing to be an expert in the field in your demographic that you're
Sure.
working in. Not just a one-off, like, oh, I represented this one celebrity because I had a connection. But most of the people that get into that streamline have some sort of connectivity there. They
Sure.
grew up there. Um, they're connected socially. Um, they worked for a talent agency at one time and know a lot of the players. Um, but that's really what it is. And the marketing part of it helps you, but that's not actually what gets you the business. It's your ability to understand who the decision makers are and cultivate dialogue and a relationship with them.
Yeah, I like that. This idea of sort of staying in touch with people socially, I think is really important, and it can be done in a lot of different ways. You mentioned a few really great ideas, which would be, volunteer efforts or beautifying
Yeah.
an area. Like, hey, I'm inviting my clients to come, or even just celebrating a local business or something that is maybe something that the client can relate to. Maybe it's even, hey, what's your favorite stores in town? Mr. or
Mhm.
Mrs. Client, let me go talk to the owner of that business and see if we can do something fun as a social event. Is it okay if I, bring up your name?
Right.
There's lots of cool ways that you can do social events that aren't necessarily just, that could be a client appreciation event, like you said, volunteer effort. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one dinner, although those are great, of course, too, but not everybody wants to do those things. So of course, I think you're right. And whether or not I think the client comes to the event is largely not as important, right? Just the fact that they know that you thought about them, that you're reaching out, that you're inviting them to
Mhm.
something, and that you're thinking about them. Also, and also too, I love this idea of, hey, I was just thinking about your house, and do you know it's been a year since you bought it? Doing a simple home anniversary call, or some of these, sort of things that we go, oh yeah, I should do that, but we don't do it.
Yes.
There's lots of little ways just to stay part of their lives.
Some of these agents, I have this kind of theory, like I call it a vine theory, and it's they're very connected to high net worth people, and it's like a vine. They use one vine to
Yeah,
reach for the next vine, to reach to the next vine, and they're not doing it in an unauthentic way. Those are just the circles of people that they're running in,
yeah,
and occasionally you'll have a high net worth businessman or businesswoman who are making their own decisions. Um, but I would say that that's not always the case. It's
sure.
usually somebody else who's helping them with that. So again, it's learning more about them through discovery and less about you talking about yourself, and how great you are and how good you are, and listening more to them and figuring out where the where the decision makers are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, with really any client, there's opportunities to be notified as an agent to when something is happening either in that client's life, whether you're looking
Mhm.
on social media and you're connected to them that way, if they are on social media, or knowing where they work and putting their company name into a Google search for news alerts, and
Right.
or just looking on LinkedIn if they have it, or if they're in the creative field, they have a performance coming up, or they just earned a new gig, or what are a new product, or so, that there's all these ways to, thankfully, with technology, to inform us about what's going on in our clients' lives. And then it's just simply a matter of, like, I have a friend, he plays in your neck of the woods, who's a Remax agent. He's one of the top Remax guys in the world. And because he's this top Remax guy, he gets a lot of publicity, and he just news stories are written about him quite a bit. And anytime I see a news story, I just shoot him a little text message, just because we're friends. And we're not that close of friends, but I mess up like, hey, I just saw your thing. And he always responds. He always appreciates it. He's like,
Yeah.
you're basically the only person that does that for me. And we're not even good buddies, but I go, well, I just put you in a search, and I just, when it comes up, I told him, I'm
Yeah.
not really searching for you. It's just telling Google is telling me that something, and he's like, I don't care. He's like, I just appreciate that you read something. So I always think that's a great tip for agents is, find out where your clients work, find out, what industry they're in, and just, have some news sent your way every so often, so you can go, hey, I saw that news article, or I saw this thing. Is that,
Right.
just
Yes.
curious how there's always little ways, I think, to demonstrate care that I suspect at the higher net worth space is also super, super important, is really making sure that these people feel, because there's so many agents to choose from. Um,
Yes,
Obviously
yes.
they have no problem getting an agent. It's more about obviously finding the right one. I have a question about listing presentations.
Okay.
What do you coach agents to do on a listing presentation that may be even a little different from what other agents might do?
So great question. I think too much of the listing presentation, I think that the tendency is to be very agent heavy.
Yeah.
And I think that is a mistake. I think it needs to be about discovery. The agent needs to go sit with the person that they're listing for and obviously have their ducks in a row and know the value and be able to articulate that. But they need to be talking about the seller and they need to learn. So what we do is we try to understand what's important to the seller, what they value. Because once you know what they value, it's much easier than you just throwing collateral at them. Like I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. That is not as effective as or sitting in front of them and being like, I'm number one in my market share. I sold this many homes. I represented this many clients. I sold, 500 million. And it's like, they don't care about that. They really don't care. They want to have a connection to you. They want to feel like you have some special sauce that they want. Um, and I think you learn that through listening and discovering what they want and need. And then when you discover that, then you can talk about what you can provide for them.
Yeah, it
Does that
makes
make
sense.
sense?
It does. It does. It's this idea of not just really, throwing all the spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks around, is obviously finding out what are your touch points, what lights you. I'm doing this on the recruiting side. I used to, and this is like, I'm embarrassed to admit this because I did this for the last 14 years. But the way that we got to 800 agents was we just talked about our value proposition. Here's all the stuff we do,
Yeah.
and it
No,
worked
no, no.
to get to this level. There's nothing wrong with that. But what would have been much more effective, and I'd probably have twice as many agents here today, is if I said to agents before getting to the solution, hey, what is your pain point, or what are your challenges right now
Yes,
with your
yes.
brokerage? Where are you feeling, are you not getting enough training support? Do you feel the brand isn't, are you struggling with lead gen? Like where are you? Okay, I'm going to come back to you with a solution. And then you probably
Right.
don't have to do as much of the, here's all the cool stuff we're about. I understand you. I see you. I'll help you solve your problem. That's really what people want.
I mean, we have a beautiful listing presentation. Most of our agents have an amazing marketing portfolio that they bring with them of print and social media and reels and video and all the stuff that they've done. We also have we have a digital listing presentation as well that we use. That's video. That's amazing. But really, we really try to encourage the agents to not go sit in the living room and present that stuff. We try to get them to go connect with the principal, have discussion, view the home, get as much information as they can, and then they can talk about the things that they provide because then they can touch upon the things that the owner has said is important to them. And there's usually more of a connection there.
Yeah. And I would love to end with just, how are you encouraging your agents to stay motivated right now? You know, rates are obviously higher than any that people would like, even though historically they're not that high, but it can feel high in relation to the last 3 years. And also inventory is challenging. I'm sure in your market you're dealing with that as well.
Mhm.
What are you telling agents about, hey, here's what to stay focused on today?
Good question. Um, yeah, because it's been a rough couple of years for people.
Yeah.
So I understand the frustration. Um, let's see. I think the thing that I that I hate to say preach the most, but it's just for them to make sure that they are continuing to evolve what they're doing.
Mhm.
Um, and the overall goal is to completely master what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I guess things that I would continue to have them focus on now because of the limited inventory would be probably to sharpen their knife with regards to their value and
Yeah,
maybe their listing presentation and their buyer presentation. Um, we get complacent, and a lot of times growth hides there
sure.
when we don't keep learning, keep stretching. To think of this as perpetual learning,
Yeah,
until the market improves, and it will. I mean, we're already seeing it improve here. Um, but challenge yourself to examine what you're doing, and if you need help with that, find somebody who you trust who can help you identify some blind spots that you have, because everybody has them, and flush them out and work through them. And I think if you do that, the mechanics of being agent will kind of take over, and things will start to flow again. It
I
just
think that's
takes time,
it does, and I love the idea of having another set of eyes on the.
Absolutely.
Look, every athlete needs a coach. So
Yeah.
every professional athlete has a coach, rather. I should say that a
Right.
different way. Every professional athlete, I mean, I'm sure maybe there's an exception to this, but 99.9% of them have coaches. There's probably a reason for that. And it's not because the athlete doesn't know what to do or how to train. They know, but they
That's
have a
right.
coach because the coach can oftentimes see things that they can't. So whether you're hiring a third party coach, whether your coach could be in-house, like at Howard's, at Norman and Associates, look, that is what Howard does. So if you are at an office, if you're in LA or anywhere, if you're anywhere at an office when you're not getting that level of agent development, and again, training is one thing and support is another, but agent development, I think, is
Mm.
really a different thing. And that's
Wow.
really,
Yeah.
as Howard said earlier, it's a deep dive. I want to find your blind spots and I want to help you see your blind spots. And then I'm going to give you a solution around that. Not just, hey, here's my big problem, help me solve it. Everyone's got problems in their business, but this idea of having somebody find the problems that you're not even super aware of or what's getting in your own way to solve those problems, that's where somebody like Howard and Norman and Associates can help. So if you think that Howard and his team would be a good fit for you, and you think you could bring value to Norman and Associates, and you're looking for a new opportunity in the LA market, Howard, what's the best way an agent? Well, first of all, what are you looking for in an agent, and what's the best way they should reach out?
I mean, we are looking. We're not just looking for people who are highly productive. I mean, we typically are looking for people who are potentially undervalued where they are, um, not getting enough touch, not getting enough development, and people that want to contribute something to the greater good, want to be something bigger than just themselves, part of something bigger than just themselves. Um, because we have all kinds of productive agents, from agents that do under six figures and agents that make into the millions. So, but we're looking for people who want to contribute in some way to what we're doing and be part of something a little different.
I love that. Well, Normand.com is where you can go to learn all about Norman and Associates and reach out to Howard. All of his contact information is there. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. It's Nourmand. Also follow them on social. They're everywhere. We'll have links to that as well. And if you're an agent in the LA area and you would like to get introduced to the high net worth space, or if you think you can bring value to that space, I would encourage anyone who's thinking about it to think about what you could offer before reaching out, because I think that's really important as well. I love it when agents come to me and say, here's what I think I can do for you guys. Not that that's even necessarily what I'm looking for, but I love when somebody brings that to it, because it means they've done their homework. They know who we are. So if you're going to reach out, please do a little homework and think about where you could fit in, and see if that would be a good option. And certainly reach out to Howard. You can reach him very easily, email, phone. He's very easy to find. We'll have links to his contact information in the show notes. Howard, on behalf of our audience, thank you so much for coming on today. Greatly appreciate you and your commitment to agent development, your commitment to helping agents get better, because that is so incredibly important right now. So thank you, and obviously you're doing a heck of a job with the amount of production that your agents are doing, even in a tough market. It's just truly incredible. So, on
Thank
behalf of the audience, thank you. And on behalf of Howard and myself, we want to thank the audience. You're the reason we do this show. So thank you for making it all the way to the end of the episode. Please check out norman.com, learn about Howard and his firm, see if it might be a good fit for you. And or maybe you have maybe you're not in the LA area. A lot of our listeners, of course, aren't, but maybe you have clients that travel or rather have a second home in Los Angeles. Guess what? You probably need an agent to refer to. Reach out to Howard and his team, and his team plays in the high net worth space. So if you can service his clients who maybe have homes in other areas, that would be a good opportunity to reach out to see if you can make some good connections. I have a ton of high net or sorry of high. Well, we only interview high producing agents on this show. All of them have these relationships all over the country. So it's a good opportunity to think about, whether you could add value there. So reach out to him and his team. Also check out our sponsors. We appreciate them for helping support our show. And please tell another agent about this episode. Send them a link. Just think of another agent in your office, maybe that's struggling right now and could use this sort of mini coaching session that Howard gave us today to help sort of get them back on the right track. Send them a link. We appreciate it. Also, leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. We greatly appreciate all your comments. Howard, all right. We will see everybody on the next episode. Howard, thank you so much.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. I appreciate you as well. We will see everybody on the next episode.